Avowed is one of the most anticipated RPGs of this year, coming from the very own Obsidian Entertainment, who have made some banger games like Grounded, The Outer Worlds, Fallout New Vegas, Knights of the Old Republic 2, Pillars of Eternity, and really they're a stacked team of talented individuals, and with that roster comes expectation. This is their brand new RPG set in the Pillars of Eternity universe. I got a chance to play this game early thanks to Obsidian and Xbox for sending me a code, but this video is in no way sponsored. I was not even asked to do a formal review, nor am I getting paid for any of this. So in this review, I'm going to talk about the good, the mid, and the bad of the game, and the ultimate verdict. In this review, I won't go into any spoiler territory or even get close to it. I like you being able to experience the magic of the video game themselves, and I will only show my early gameplay so you won't get to see anything crazy. But I will talk about my experience, the gameplay, the aspects of the game that are worth highlighting, and more. To start off with some background about the game, you are sent as an Imperial envoy from the Aether Empire. You get to pick the background, the personality, and the appearance of this person, and you are sent to the Living Lands, an isolated area from the rest of the world. The locals aren't exactly thrilled to have you there, but you're there to investigate rumors of a plague that's taking place in the lands. This is how the story starts. Now let's get into it. Starting off with the good elements of this game, and the first one and biggest one has to be the RPG aspects of this game. Obsidian are masters of RPGs, and they're crafting RPGs where your choices matter, and they really do in this game. You get to experience the RPG aspects in every aspect, from your background, your character, your personality, the decisions you make, who you get to believe, the dialogue choices. Everything is handcrafted to let you experience your own adventure. Yes, the game gives you a mission and a new setting with an ultimate quest to explore, but apart from that, how you achieve the quest, the background you set, the dialogue choices you make, who you align with is all up to you. You're the one who gets to determine good from bad. This is a classic old school RPG experience. Think Fallout, think Skyrim, think Outer Worlds. The build you want to make with your character, what weapons you use, the skills you spec into, the choices you make, all on you. Speaking of which, now let's talk about a big piece of the game, and that's gameplay. This is a classless system, so instead of being tied into various classes, you can gain experience, and when you level up, you can invest your skill points across various stats, like the normal ones like intellect, might, dexterity, and then you also get an ability point, which you can use across various skill trees, which you can mix and match. So you can get some abilities from one skill tree of a ranger combined with others of a fighter, or something to create a hybrid playstyle. The official skill trees are for fighter, ranger, and wizard, but even within them there are a lot of sub-styles you can pick and choose. So you get experience from doing quests and fighting monsters, discovering areas, and that experience helps you get stronger, which really makes an impact. There are also special godlike powers which you acquire through the story, which are really cool as well. The next major part of gameplay is the combat, and the combat is one of the highlights of this game as it's surprisingly really fun. You have a two-handed system similar to Skyrim where you can dual wield swords, axes, clubs, shields, bows, magic, and even guns, so it gives you a lot of room to experiment with, and dare I say, the combat is honestly as fun as Skyrim. You have a stamina bar where each action depletes your stamina depending on what you're using. So if you're using a two-handed greatsword, it takes a lot more stamina to swing and takes longer to attack than a dagger, for example. So it gives a lot of range to the playstyles you can have, and each of them seems super viable. The magic spells are fun, ranged is also really fun with guns and bows, and of course the melee is super fun because you can also parry and dodge, so it plays really well. The attacks are weighty and you can feel them, both giving and receiving, and enemies have a stun meter and elemental resistances, really adding to the combat complexity. Once you stun foes, you can do devastating execution style attacks, you can parry them with perfect blocks, and if you're blocking and you're out of stamina, then you know exactly what would happen. Really, the combat system is great, and it even interacts with the environment, so if you do lightning spells in water, well, you can try it out and see what will happen. I was mainly using spells and melee because of how fun they were, and you can switch between two loadouts super easily with a click of a button, allowing you to easily switch whenever you need to, and even in the main menu, you can switch your weapons at any time. There's even a stealth system where you can do sneak attacks, so the combat is quite rich, but I'll talk about the stealth system a little later in the video. During combat, you have your D-pad, which acts like your quick access, which you can customize. So generally, it will be a health potion, an essence potion, which is basically mana in this game used for spells. There's throwables, you can assign spells, and you can also assign companion commands as well. There's also an ability wheel that you can access, which stops time, and then you can choose which ability to use. Even during combat, when you're using ranged, you can cause critical hits by attacking certain parts of the enemy, and you can do critical hits randomly when using other weapons as well too. I didn't talk about throwables much, but just know that there's a lot you can do in combat, and it's varied, so you can play it how you want to play it. Now, related to the combat is the enemies and bosses, and there are a lot of them. The enemy types are fun to deal with, and they're varied, so it's not like you're constantly fighting the same enemy all the time, but of course some of the most common ones are the skeletons that the series is known for, You can fight bears early game, ghost creatures, weird animals, each of them having their own attack patterns and putting up a challenge, especially when they gang up on you. The enemies have their own elemental resistances and stun meters, and the boss fights are especially challenging and fun. The bosses do put up quite a challenge and you have to be careful. There are optional boss missions too, which you can get through the main town hub called bounties, and you can pick those up for cash and some good loot to scour. Now earlier I talked about companion commands. So let's talk about companions. And in this game, companions are critical to the game. It's not like Baldur's Gate 3 where you can choose not to recruit them, but you will have to recruit them and they matter to the story as well. You can converse with them, choose to listen to them, and they help you with combat. You can't control them in combat. You can only direct them with companion commands, and each of the companions are unique. So they have a different skill tree, different abilities, and different weapons. So picking which ones are with you affects how you play the game, and you can travel with 2 at a time, keeping it a close-knit group. You can talk to them in your camp. They talk in dialogue while you're going about the day. They definitely matter to the story as well, because even NPCs will note who you're with and they will talk to them as well. Now let's talk about quests and missions. The main story quest is very interesting, and calling back to the RPG aspect, you can have a direct impact to the story. I'm not going to go into the main story at all, but this game also has a ton of side missions and side quests you can take on. There are ones just for cash. They're the typical collect a certain amount of hidden items throughout the map and bring them back to me, or kill a big monster type quests, and some are really interesting as well. There's a good amount to do in this game, and the game feels very rewarding with these quests and more, which I will talk about. I didn't really feel bored in this game. I always thought there was a lot you could do and kind of wanted to uncover everything. There are even bounties you can obtain where you can kill optional mini bosses that are usually quite tough, but then you're well rewarded in the bounty in terms of cash and also in terms of loot most of the time. So they're definitely worth your time. Next is the loot, and there's a lot of loot to pick up with the general different tiers you can expect. So in terms of armors, there's light, medium, and heavy, and then there are different tiers of items ranging from common, fine, exceptional, and superb, and even unique items that have unique effects. Nothing too out of the ordinary here, but I like the abundance of the unique items, and for each of the items, you can upgrade its stats where you can really feel the difference between the different tier upgrades, and then you can also enchant items to give them extra abilities which are game changing. One time I did a quest and got a unique weapon that was so much stronger than my current weapon and so fun to use that I changed my whole build around that weapon, and that's where this game shines. I did that a couple of times throughout the playthrough so far, so finding unique items and experimenting with the builds is super satisfying and fun. One major positive of the game that I haven't talked about yet is just the overall exploration in the game. The Living Lands itself is quite beautiful. The graphics are great, and there's just tons to explore. Just running around, finding all of the secrets that the game likes to hide. There are hidden loots and hidden treasures. You can get treasure maps you can track down, find optional missions. The game definitely awards the exploration because it gives you a leg up. I remember early in the game I was just exploring the map and I got a really cool unique item that I really liked and ended up upgrading. The game just feels very rewarding, and exploring more gives you more perspective. You can talk to more people and really just get a better idea of this wonderfully crafted world. This game has open zones, so it's not totally open world, and I think that's a good thing because it doesn't make it so big that you can't explore everything, but the maps themselves are quite expansive with tons to see. You can even use some of your spells to help in exploration. So when you use ice spells on water, you can create platforms to walk on. You can use fire spells to get rid of some burnable obstacles, and you have to use your abilities to explore as well, really adding to the immersion of this game. By exploring, you're collecting more resources, which helps you craft and upgrade more. You can find cooler items and find more enemies, so you end up leveling more. The Living Lands itself do have it all in terms of various biomes, so there's luscious forests, oceans, caves, and so much more just waiting for you to dive into. Now that we talked about all of the good parts, let's talk about the mids. And these are parts of the games which I think are just okay or mixed. And starting it off, that's going to be the Pillars universe. Now, I actually think that this is a positive because there are a lot of callbacks to the Pillars of Eternity events that take place. There are lots of lore you can pick up and read about the different events, but not everyone has played the Pillars of Eternity games. So I'm putting this in mid. Truthfully, I didn't play the Pillars of Eternity games either, so I was a little lost at first, but the game does a good job of guiding you through what you need to know, and you definitely don't need to play those games if you play this game. I played and it was totally fine, even though I know nothing about the lore. So for those players that did, I think they would enjoy this game even more. But for those that didn't, they might get slightly annoyed at the callbacks, but I've read that those are also amazing games, so could be a reason for us to check those games out. The devs specifically said that this game can be played 100% without playing the other games, and I agree with that sentiment. The next thing that is just okay is the size of the game. Don't go into this game thinking it's going to be as grand or as wide as something something like Witcher 3 or Red Dead or even Skyrim. Combat definitely feels like Skyrim, but it's a smaller game in scope than those games. It focuses the story more and doesn't try selling itself as an open world RPG. It's an open zone RPG where the focus is on the story, exploration, and combat, and it's not a super heavy bloated game where there are quests just for the sake of adding in completion time. I think the size of the game is great, and I actually haven't fully finished the game, so it might be longer than what I think. I'm about halfway or in the mid game, and it's been sizable so far, but it's not going to compare to something like The Witcher or anything like that. Another thing people might be mixed about is the lore in this game. There are a lot of optional reading that you can pick up from various books, and that's to be expected in RPGs. I definitely didn't read through everything, but if you're a person that likes lore, then you'll be happy to hear this. And then for people like me, then it's actually a positive because it's optional lore that you can read if you want, but you're not forced to. Some of the reading is critical and story related, whether that's a side quest or such, but others are just for world building. Now that we talked about the mid, finally let's get to the bad portions of the game. And one thing I think that can be improved upon in this game is definitely the stealth. The stealth mechanics are generally cool. You can sneak, hide in grass, and even do sneak executions to enemies, which seem really awesome at first. Then when I tried executing it, one, the enemies do move in a pattern, but they don't move that often. So you're generally stuck waiting there for hours on end trying to get them to turn around or get them in the right position so you can sneak around to their backside. But even if you manage to do that, which isn't that hard, but once you kill one enemy, all the other enemies are alerted, even if their backs are turned. So it's hard if you want to fully stealthily take down everyone. You can use it at most to one person, and you definitely should because the sneak execution does a ton of damage. So when going for bosses, that's what I usually did. But it doesn't work as a mechanic where you can take down hordes of enemies from the darkness. Just know that I didn't spec into the stealth specific skills either though. I didn't really see anything there particularly makes it better, aside from some invisibility abilities, but maybe there are some sound abilities too where everyone doesn't get alerted. So take it with a grain of salt, but at least from a normal person trying to do stealth that doesn't spec into it, it's not viable to take down the whole squad just using stealth. This next thing is quite small, but I wanted to call out the treasure maps. You can pick up treasure maps throughout the game from various vendors or by finding them at quests, and they're visual drawing that showcases the actual environment and where the treasure is relative to the picture. They're actually really cool, and I like the drawing aspect and how you have to match up the environment to actually get the treasure. The one thing I don't like is that in the quest log, even if you are sure you got the treasure, it doesn't automatically track that you picked up that specific treasure. You can manually mark the quest as completed, and to me that just feels like it could be better. I wish it was automatic so you can rest assured that you did pick up the treasure and didn't just almost pick up the treasure. I know I'm nitpicking here, but I'm trying to call out aspects of the game that could genuinely be improved upon. Now that we covered the good, the mid, and the bad, let's get to the ultimate verdict on this game. There's a lot to like about this game. It keeps the scale of the game smaller than other massive games like Skyrim, but that's not what this game sets out to do. This game wants to be like an old school RPG, and that's where it excels. From the story writing to the lore, the surprisingly great combat, the great classless system where you can mix and match abilities, respec whenever you want, have two loadouts, and the actual RPG where your choices matter, this game does what it sets out to do perfectly. There are some things this game can improve upon, and I hope they continue to add more content in this world and in this franchise. With that being said, I rate games on a scale of play, backlog, or not worth it, and I classified this as a must-play game. It's coming day one to Game Pass, so if you're a Game Pass owner, it's a no-brainer to check out. It's totally worth your time. But even if you don't have Game Pass, it's a great buy and worth the money if you like these action-adventure RPGs. This is one of my most anticipated games to be added to Game Pass, and it exceeded my expectations. And I knew Obsidian would deliver on a great RPG. They always do. If you like this video or if it helps you, then please like and follow so I know to keep making videos. I'm still doing this in my spare time, so if it helps you, it truly helps me to know someone likes the content and that I should keep doing it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll try answering. And if there's anything I left out, then comment below. Would love your thoughts.